Glorious and powerful morning to everyone. Good morning, good morning. You probably remember the devastated suburb of Kyiv called Vyshneve. And there, those explosions made an indelible impression on many outside observers and on the residents of that very town. I think it didn't just make an indelible impression, but it was simply an absolute horror because, well, it looked like this. And I've already shown this, but it's worth showing it again. After that, they gave the figures. Explosions as a result of detonating, what did they call them, military objects. Yeah, it's like, I remember in Russia they called powerful explosions pops, and now here they call it noise from military items. Military objects, even Zelensky himself has already announced what that is. It's a military supply depot. Well, of course, what else could it be? Well, obviously it's not beets or potatoes or I don't know, lotus or something. Of course, all that can blow up too, but within reason, right? So it turns out this was an ammunition depot that Russia hit during the strike on Vyshneve in Kyiv, and it belonged to one of the enterprises of Ukrainian defense industry. Previously, it was stated that none of this belonged to the armed forces of Ukraine and was not under their control. At least those warehouses that, yes, were blown up. Now it turns out that after all, Ukrainian defense industry, well, that's probably the armed forces of Ukraine, and it's under their control. Or correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know. Maybe Maduro should be controlling it, or Trump, or maybe Ivory Coast should be controlling Ukrainian defense industry. Well, most likely it's still the armed forces of Ukraine, probably. So, Zelensky announced that after the tragedy, a criminal case was opened and there will be dismissals in the defense company. I think that solved everything right away. That brought back several dozen houses that were razed to their foundations and several hundred more that were damaged. And probably, forgive my sarcasm, it also brought back the innocent people who were killed. According to Zelensky, he has already received all the necessary information from the Security Service, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the Prosecutor General's office. He says the following: there is a criminal case. The people responsible will be held criminally liable and of course will be dismissed, said Zelensky, emphasizing that the warehouse belonged to one of the enterprises in Ukraine's defense industry. Well, again, apparently nobody knows about this organization, and it seems that it's not under anyone's control. After that we can recall the words of Budanov which were said just yesterday. Basically, all of Ukraine is praying for Ukraine, for the president. Well, I don't know, if you're not praying for the president, write in the comments what you think about this. Budanov previously, when he was the head of a completely different organization, not the president's office, well, I've shown these videos more than once, expressed quite reasonable thoughts. Something happened now, and today he was making statements near the Kyiv-Peshchersk Lavra, talking about the shrine. Well, about all that basically, it all started. Ruriks, all sorts of Vikings and so on. That's extremely interesting, but what's it called? Like that meme says, very interesting, but I don't get it. So, apparently there should be a continuation. Then, immediately after the suburb of Kyiv was destroyed, Zelensky announced that new joint rapid response forces had been created. What these forces are supposed to respond to? Who will lead them? Well, let's see. 2 decrees have been signed, and they will significantly change the structure of the armed forces. The army will have a separate command for long-range strikes against Russia, that's the first thing. The new Joint Rapid Response Force is the second. What prevented all this from being created during the 6 years of war is absolutely impossible to understand. Maybe it's the Ministry of Rhetorical Questions. Golden cheese there, milky scream, maybe you'll decide to solve the question, but I have a feeling that's not quite the case. In short, let's take a detailed look at what these decrees were, what they mean for an ordinary citizen, and what the point of all this is. The first decree creates a command for long-range, essentially global influence on Russia. Zelensky stated the task firmly. This command should concentrate all the available resources. The goal is to further reduce Russia's military potential in a significant way. Here one immediately recalls Channel 1100, or rather where truths were also stated and some were voiced very beautifully. Those were the origins of the internet, of course, and remembering it still exists to this day. Well, it's quite nostalgic. Then, what does the Commander-in-Chief tell us? He talks about the second decree. This second decree launches the Joint Rapid Response Forces. If you combine these four words, it becomes OSBR. OSBR is a new component of the army that should combine the combat capability of assault troops, unmanned and artillery components, and other means for rapid response at the front. It's absolutely impossible to understand what prevented the forces from responding quickly at the front before.
It was a slight degradation, regression. Digression.
But now assaults on the groves will not just happen for no reason, but as part of the reform process. Zelensky says there are many questions about the transformation of the assault troops, particularly their treatment of people. Law enforcement agencies are already taking procedural steps, and there will be changes at the level of assault troop management. And then it goes on to talk about Russia, about what Zelensky said regarding Russia, but here are the specific steps that were planned. They were planned, but honestly, I don't understand what that means. Procedural steps. Who takes procedural steps? Well, honestly, I'm a bit lost with these questions. It'd be better if Taras Yuri were watching us. That would be just wonderful. I suggest he covers this topic on his channel. I'm sending my greetings right away because this is very strange. Taking procedural steps, well, I don't know. I take steps physically with my feet, step, just like that. And here it's the law enforcement agencies taking those procedural steps. And at the level of managing assault troops, they are also promising changes. They used to say that assault troops aren't really necessary because we need drone operators, we need clerks, we need good-looking guys, fighters who say all sorts of things on the internet. Well, you've seen them, right? I've shown you those fighters. And they were doing something in their own Ural way. Basically, they were trying to hype up some information verbally, and these communication streams were immediately reproduced on YouTube. That's what it's actually meant for. Then Zelensky started to discuss things after he had talked over the whole situation. He started discussing the fact that Ukraine has the support of the world, even among Putin's inner circle. Let's take a look at who this inner circle is. In the Kremlin, more and more people are realizing that there is no alternative to peace. In his evening address, that very selfie video, if you will pardon my informal language, that President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, made, he noted in his selfie that Ukraine has proposed steps to bring peace closer. They received support even from people in Putin's inner circle. He stated that many people understand the real course of events and realize that there is no alternative to peace. And he expressed confidence that such sentiments in Russia will only grow stronger. Zelensky says, "We have put forward a proposal on how to bring peace closer. We have support not only from partners around the world, but also from Putin's inner circle on matters of peace. They know what's happening and that peace is the only option." You know, when I ask a question to artificial intelligence, that is this very large language model, and ask it to write a more or less substantial piece of text, I ask it not to repeat itself within 2 or 3 sentences. I ask within 2 or 3, I ask it to repeat. I ask not within 2 or 3 to repeat. I ask it not to repeat. I ask not like that. And here it repeats within the limits, peace, 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 but here there are several repetitions within a single paragraph. Shame on those who write like that. But guys, come on, try a little harder. I understand, of course, that people will get it anyway, but still. Despite all this powerful rhetoric, but I think with some low-level models, and then suddenly Portagenos Mertz bursts into our interactive session, and this stand guy who is Portagenos to us. He declares that he is calling on Russia to end the war in Ukraine. And he reminded that in Ankara, European countries that are members of the alliance are planning to announce a new package of military aid to Kyiv, and Mertz states that the summit in Ankara should demonstrate this. Forgive me, it's just that when I see him, this power, this penetrating all-encompassing force immediately overwhelms my mind, I lose focus. The electronic interaction between my neurons also decreases a bit, but at the same time, Mertz demonstrates the strength of unity on a first-name basis. The heads of state and government from NATO member countries gathered on Tuesday, as we are told. There were many discussions about the alliance's defense capability, assistance to Kyiv, and planting potatoes in winter. Well, that last one wasn't actually discussed. However, the main question is how well the Allies will be able to maintain their commitment to the alliance. No one was really able to answer this, so the question remained rhetorical. Right then, Kachka immediately jumps in. A representative of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Kachka, intervenes and states that the ambassadors have approved the opening of the last negotiation cluster with Ukraine. But can you imagine, just like that, everything came together perfectly, because right now everything we need is here. We are moving in the right direction, straight towards the European Union, where the lion lies down with the lamb under the booth. Write what you think is correct. This again is translated from very old languages. And was there a tabernacle there, for example, also the burning bush maybe, which was always burning, or something else? This is a question, an interesting one theologically, but Kachka tells us the following. The permanent representatives of the EU member states have approved the opening of the 6th negotiation cluster for Ukraine's accession to the bloc, called External Relations, meaning all participants of the 6th cluster. Well, as I think, there are all sorts of powerful leaders, there are representatives of the mighty group, and there are representatives of the cluster of 6. The 6. Honestly, I don't know what it's called, but it's something like that, and Kachka proudly stated that this is indeed the case, Cluster 6. Especially important in the modern global security environment are common security and defense policy, trade, humanitarian aid and cooperation in the field of development, and the alignment of Ukraine with the EU's common foreign and defense policy. It is absolutely impossible to understand what Ukraine was doing before outside the EU's common foreign and defense policy. But, as we can see, Ukraine was engaged in something that requires analysis, approval or disapproval, and then further integration into the main infrastructure, into the body of the European Union. It's like I showed earlier in a video about a film from the 1930s. And there, someone said the following. That you need to sink your teeth into the enemy's body. But here, instead of biting in, we are, on the contrary, removing the teeth of external enemies from the body of the European Union, and everything becomes wonderful. The white, delicate body remains untouched. Everything is well protected by the fighting porcupine with its remaining quills, and, well, nothing bad happens. At the same time, EU ministers are now discussing preparing Ukraine's energy system for the winter and supporting air defense. The immediate question arises, why are they discussing this? Is there someone in Ukraine? Or was there, I've already lost track among all these numerous ministries, a responsible person? It was Mustafa Nayem's brother, I forgot his name, but his last name is also Nayem and he has 2 Mercedes cars. He is known for talking about the need to protect Ukraine's energy infrastructure. He really protected it, didn't he? Even in the summer, there are already power outages, and officials say, you're using too many air conditioners, turn them off immediately and you'll be happy. So Reid looks at this and thinks, well, we won't turn off the air conditioner, we don't want to sweat, so we'll come up with some new solutions. Well, and the EU ministers apparently want to help. And on July 13, during a meeting of the Council of the European Union, the preparation of Ukraine's energy system for the next heating season is being discussed. Let's imagine that at first everything is fine. Some Minister of Fuel Affairs from Ukraine comes in and says, guys, we don't need your help. We've thought of everything in advance, installed solar panels, nuclear fusion. We've already launched a laser from the moon, and even the moon people have started it up there. It helps to extract energy, not to finish off. Don't confuse extract with finish off. They sound similar but mean different things, so you shouldn't mix up these 2 words. That's what they say, but here on Earth we've installed energy systems that will work exactly as they should. So everything seems fine here. But the second scenario is if it suddenly feels like winter has come unexpectedly again, that it's suddenly cold. It turns out there's no money, no infrastructure, no heat, nothing at all, and officials are running around blaming each other. Yeah, I told you winter was coming soon. I told you back at the end of March that winter was coming soon, and the other one says, yeah, but winter can't come this quickly. But does winter really start somewhere in early December? No, not in February, somewhere. Let's wait a bit longer. I think it all happens in a similar way, but the Council has this to say. It is noted here that the main focus will be on urgent support for Ukrainian air defense. How this is related to energy is unclear, but apparently it has something to do with financing, but that's obvious. The budget should be commendably allocated to the protection and restoration of critically important energy infrastructure, as well as long-term measures to strengthen the resilience of the energy system, Ukraine. You know, when I read such news, I sometimes get the impression that we are recalling some tongue twisters, like in the yard there's grass, it's grassy firewood on the woodpile. There, Vasya and Vasya are sitting and telling us about all this. But no, it seems like serious people are writing this news, someone is seriously talking about it, and suddenly these things just appear. But it's very strange. Oh, come on, what? Well, let's take a look at the powerful leaders, because these are the kinds of topics we have on the last day. And I think it's extremely interesting. By the way, write in the comments what you would like to hear in the upcoming news, maybe some analysis or something. Maybe we can do without any more analysis. Forget about it. Excuse my informal language, because a lot of people are already doing these analyses. Nothing good is happening anyway. But let's take a look at this curly-haired bro. Look, what a powerful bro. Suddenly, tanned journalists are looking at him or passing by him. He has this look, you know, I've already mentioned it. It's like a look that says, damn, what's going on? Yeah, I could use some tea or a beer, or maybe go back to Italy, to that island, or not an island, but a lake. And then suddenly some curly-haired character starts spouting some nonsense. Obviously, this upsets the journalist.
What does Putin want? He aims to destabilize the system and spread panic.
The journalist's reaction immediately looks like this, like he's interested, but it's some kind of mental confrontation, I don't know. Maybe the journalist is surprised by the abundance of hair on his interviewee's head, or maybe there's water leaking somewhere and he's looking past his interviewee with the abundant hair. And of course, I'm jealous. You can write in the comments just how much. But it looks terrible, very strange.
Calls for what? For people to come out and say enough. Let's sign any peace already. We're tired. We don't need this. That's what he wants. But there's an interesting historical analogy here. The Nazis struck London, and the Allies began striking military factories. That was more successful. Britain's resistance was not broken. They attacked, and in the end, they still won.
I didn't understand much. Britain, some strikes, what, where, but let's mention Churchill, let's also remember Eisenhower, maybe someone else, but that's just wonderful. Ah, but is there any information about the people who rose up in Lviv? And here suddenly we have a bearded little pie appearing. Ah, that's on the right. Don't confuse her with the journalist on the left who used to host a show of a certain inclination, let's say, quite lowbrow. Ah, now she has suddenly become a political commentator, and in front of her these bearded little pies are performing. They tell everyone how everything should be done. Apparently they have analytical thinking. It's like in the cartoon about the fox. The talking bird, as they said there, has intelligence and wit, but here too it's kind of a talking bird, but only with a module like that. Well, you get it, right? What is it?
I can't take things like that seriously.
There's a bearded little pie sitting in his kitchen talking about how it's impossible to take all this seriously, like come on, about the bros who suddenly broke free from the clutches of restaurants, from the clutches of some pubs. And then suddenly they're attacked by ordinary citizens, or rather not attacked, but the citizens resist the forced mobilization roundups, and the little pie says you can't do that.
First and foremost, they are military personnel, and secondly, they serve in rear positions at territorial recruitment centers. Many of these servicemen are wounded and should, at the very least, justly punish these people.
Punish whom? Again, there's hardly any logic in these words, but he says they need to be punished. First, he talks about the victims from the territorial recruitment centers, and then, without any commas or periods, well, it's clear that he writes just like he speaks. He says, these people need to be punished, so who exactly do you want to punish? Those ones, the ones from the recruitment centers, or those who resisted the recruitment officers, or do you want to punish that red-haired woman? What's going on? Who do you want to punish? Be more logical. We want logic. Yeah, where's the logic? There's no logic.
So that they receive fair punishment. Наказание.
By the way, that word doesn't exist in the Ukrainian language. The correct word is pokaranya. Pokaranya. Alright, let's stop all these Ukrainian language lessons. Although I could talk a lot in Ukrainian, it's my first, second, whichever native language you want, along with Russian. And when I hear this surzik, where they mix up Russian words, German, some Indonesian, put the stress in the wrong place or something else, well, I immediately get some kind of mental dissonance. And on top of that, look, he's wearing a military uniform and suddenly there's some kind of t-shirt. The color is fuchsia. Well, it's not exactly fuchsia, maybe a dark red fuchsia, but it seems like a military uniform should be in a camouflage color. But the journalist really likes it.
I'm sorry for interrupting you like that, but these warriors, each of them deserves special honor and respect. I don't have the words to express my gratitude to them in any case. The military are more than employees, and I'll always stress that.
Yes, the woman to whom I am expressing this gratitude together with the serviceman, this is a person who doesn't know the Ukrainian language. She used to host a show of an intimate nature, let's put it that way. But now she is a political commentator, a Valkyrie, a female fighter. Well, in general, whatever you can come up with regarding the feminine form, write it in the comments, it's extremely interesting. Linguistic and language discussions are extremely, let's say, satisfying our need for some kind of mental stimulation. So let's follow this and try to follow their train of thought, if there is one, of course. Well, that's it. Goodbye, everyone. War until victory.
We need war until total victory, like we need life, like we need air, so we'll bite into enemy soil with our teeth. Come on, enough yelling. Show us an example. Get on board. Yes, over there.
With pleasure.
I'm not eligible for the draft. I'm just too old. What, are you going to take the lead? We'll cut you some slack because of your age. That's right. Thank you.